Hi everybody, we're here to talk about fingerprints. Fingerprints come in three distinct patterns. While we all have unique fingerprints, there are patterns that exist among those fingerprints, and they differ a little bit from finger to finger. So we have loops. Loop fingerprints start on one side of your finger and loop around and exit on the same side of that finger. Whirl fingerprints kind of circle around, they make concentric circles from the center of the finger outward. And finally, arch fingerprints have a small arch in them, as you can see here. And some arches are more pointed and some are more shallow, like this arch here. So what we're going to do now is we have gathered three fingerprints from our crime scene. We've lifted these fingerprints by dusting them with charcoal dust, and I've been able to move them so we can analyze them, and you can analyze them as well. So let's see what patterns we can find in each of these fingerprints. We're going to start with number 1 over here. On number 1, if I take my pen and I trace this fingerprint, I can see that this fingerprint has concentric circles. If I look back at my patterns up top here, I can see that fingerprint number 1 matches a whirl. Number 2, if I trace the main pattern on that fingerprint, has an arch, a very clear arch. So we know fingerprint number 2 is an arch. And fingerprint number 3, if I trace that fingerprint, starts on one side, turns around like a U-turn, and exits on the same side. That is characteristic of a loop fingerprint. Now what we want to do is see if these fingerprints match up to any of our suspects. So I want you to analyze these fingerprints and our suspect's fingerprints and see if any of them match. While you do that, I will also see if I find any matches. So let's see what you found. I discovered that fingerprint number 1 has a whirl pattern, and if we look at Matt's fingerprint, he also has a whirl pattern. So I believe fingerprint number 1 is linked to Matt. Fingerprint number 2 has a distinct arch, and if we look at our suspect Ben, he also has an arch that can be found in his fingerprints. So I believe fingerprint number 2 matches to Ben. Fingerprint number 3 has a distinct loop that exits and enters on the right side of the finger. Corey also happens to have a loop that enters and exits on the right side of his finger. So I believe fingerprint number 3 is linked to Corey. The only fingerprint we did not find at our crime scene is Kim's.